American families struggling to make ends meet could be critical in deciding who wins the race for the White House in a few weeks' time. Both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's campaigns have unveiled plans to relieve the financial burden on households. Mitch McCann traveled to Lansing in the battleground state of Michigan to find out which plan families are buying into.
There's never a dull moment in the Caldwell household, and parents Tim and Lynette have their work cut out for them. They have 6 kids, including 5 that they adopted, and this home is bustling. There's always someone to feed. But they both admit that has become harder to do in recent years.
It's not fun looking at the numbers because we're making more, because we've gotten raises, but I feel like we can't get ahead.
Lynette says her grocery bill has more than doubled in the past few years, and she's not shopping at fancy markets, but your run-of-the-mill stores.
I would be able to spend like $100 at Meijer and then $200 at Sam's Club on a regular basis, and now I'm doing like $400 at Sam's Club and $300 at Meijer.
Recent polling ahead of the US election shows that 50% of Americans now view the cost of living as a top concern for them. And that's not surprising after speaking to people here in Lansing who have told us they are worried about everyday costs like groceries, gasoline and utility bills.
Around 20% of the population here have incomes below the poverty line, although this figure has decreased over the last decade. The City Rescue Mission of Lansing is an apolitical organisation on the front line for those who need help. Laura Grimwood says since she started working here 2 decades ago, the need for beds has risen from 70 per night to 244.
Everyone knows that the cost of living has gone up, the cost of groceries has gone up. It's impacting us as well. So we're helping people who are struggling to make ends meet, who have lost their housing because they can't afford the rising cost of medication, the rising cost of groceries, the rising cost of housing.
Living costs have risen 20% for Americans since the pandemic, and last year people spent 11% of their incomes on food, the highest proportion in more than 3 decades. The Biden administration has taken action to lower inflation, which has been working, but the cost of living is still higher than when the president took office, which makes even that success a hard sell to voters, something Donald Trump has made a focal point of his campaign.
Kamala Harris is killing the American dream.
Kamala Harris claims to support the middle class, but across the board, the middle class suffers under Kamala Harris's radical policies and agendas.
Donald Trump plans to expand oil and gas drilling, which he says will bring down energy costs for families. He's also planning to lower the corporate tax rate and implement tariffs on imported goods.
That's why we will create what I call an opportunity economy where everyone has the chance to compete and a chance to succeed.
Kamala Harris, meanwhile, has proposed a federal ban on price gouging by food producers and grocers, tax cuts for the middle class, and down payment assistance for first home buyers worth $25,000 US. The Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania found Trump's policies are likely to increase the national debt by $5.8 trillion over the next 10 years, compared to $1.2 trillion for Harris. The Caldwells try to avoid politics. They know how divisive it can be. But in a few weeks, the cost of living and an expensive few years will be on their minds at the ballot box. And Tim and Lynette say they're likely voting for Donald Trump.
He might not be the greatest person. He does say things that get on people's nerves. I'm not sure I would want him to come over to my house for dinner, but I think he's a good president. A good businessman.
These are the decisions being made in homes throughout Middle America, but ultimately it's about which presidential candidate families believe will help them at the checkout aisle and at the gas pump. Mitch McCann, CNA, Lansing, Michigan.